So today I'm adding this book to the channel, which is Native American Myths and Legends, by Richard Erdos and Alfonso Ortiz. There's 10 parts in this book. Let's all read what those are. So, part 1, Rabbit Boy Kicked That Blood Clot Around, Tales of Human Creation. Part 2 is The Place of Emergence, Tales of World Creation. Part 3, The Eye of the Great Spirit, Tales of the Sun, Moon, and Stars. Part 4, Ordeals of the Hero, Monsters and Monster Slayers. Part 5, Counting Coup, War and the Warrior Code. Part 6, The Sound of Flutes, Tales of Love and Lust. Part 7, Coyote Laughs and Cries, Trickster Tales. Part 8, 4 Legs, 2 Legs, and No Legs, Stories of Animals and Other People. Part 9, Something Whistling in the Night, Ghosts and the Spirit World. Part 10, Only the Rocks and Mountains Last Forever, Visions of the End. So I'm going to start with reading the introduction. The 166 legends recorded here. Sorry, the cover dropped. Okay. Recorded here come from the heart and soul of the native people of North America. Some have been told for thousands of years, and they are still being told and retold, reshaped and refitted to meet their audience's changing needs, and created anew out of a contemporary man's or woman's vision. They rise out of the earth, the plants, herbs, and animals, which are integral parts of the human realm. They are embedded in the ancient languages and flow according to rhythms of the natural world. A different pace, indeed, from that of a technological, man-made environment. Most industrialized people, eyes ever on the clock, fragmented by the pressing problems of a split second, microchip society, have little time or inclination, it seems, to speculate on the communal nature of the universe. Mutually shared and supportive legends about the beginning and the end of the world, and what happens in between, seem hopelessly beyond their vision. The Native American, following the pace of Indian time, still lives connected to the nurturing womb of mythology. Mysterious but real power dwells in nature, in mountains, rivers, rocks, even pebbles. White people may consider them inanimate objects, but to the Indian, they are enmeshed in the web of the universe, pulsating with life and potent with medicine. As Ernest Cassirer has written, the mythical world is at a much more fluid and fluctuating stage than our theoretical world. The world of myth is a dramatic world, a world of actions, of forces, of conflicting powers. In every phenomenon, the nature it sees the collision of these powers. Mythical perception is always impregnated with these emotional qualities. The word of the Pueblo Indians is bounded mythically and geographically by 4 sacred mountains, where the holy men still go on pilgrimages to pray for rain and to gather medicines. The associations between geography and mythic events are strong. The mountains of the northwest, for example, were believed by the native inhabitants to have once been people who fought, schemed, loved, and were eventually given the form they now have by the all-powerful one mostly as punishment for making trouble. The firmament is filled with stars and planets who were once on earth. Human lovers fated to chase each other across the evening sky into eternity. Such roles are not fixed either. The sun, moon, morning star, seem free to take human form and roam the earth, seeking love and other adventures. The links between the historic past and the present through myth are strong. Archaeologists' evidence shows that the Iroquois of the Northeast have possessed a viable material culture continuously for several thousand years, a chain reflected in an extant body of folklore which has survived despite the attempts of many generations of white society to eradicate or negatively stereotype Indian history and culture. The effects of white culture on many other regions, with the notable exception of the Southwest and the Plains, and to a degree the Northwest, have been devastating. With whole bodies of Indian literature erased or warped beyond recognition in their contemporary representations, where legends endure, they do so fiercely. Tonka, the stone god, is the Sioux's oldest god, and men still carry oddly shaped pebbles, bits of flint, or lumps of fossil agate in their medicine bundles. They still pray to special sacred rocks and tell legends about them. Rivers, lakes, waterfalls, and mountains are the abodes of spirits and often appear as living characters in stories. Even today, a Sioux or Cheyenne might say, "I felt the sacred pipe move in my hands. It was alive. Power flowed from it." Or, "When I touched the sacred Sundance bowl, I felt that it was flesh, warm flesh." The ancient tokens and symbols still exist and are carefully preserved. Modern equipment is no match. When the Sioux medicine man, Lame Deer, first traveled on a modern jet, he immediately related his Boeing 707 to the Wakinyan, the Thunderbirds, whose awesome power ignites the lightning. The airplane suffered greatly by comparison. To those used to the patterns of European fairy tales and folk tales, Indian legends often seem chaotic, inconsistent, or incomplete. Plots seem to travel at their own speed, defying convention, and at times doing away completely with recognizable beginnings and endings. Coyote is a powerful creator one moment, a sniveling coward the next. Infants display alarming talents or powers. Births and deaths alternate as fast as night and day. To try to apply conventional Western logic is not only impossible but unnecessary. Spinning out a single image or episode may be the salient feature of, indeed, the whole reason for telling a tale. And stories are often told in chains, one word, character, or idea bringing to mind a related one, prompting another storyteller to offer a contribution. The howling wind, the bubbling brook, the shrieking magpie all suggest in their vital immediacy stories out of which legends are created. Stories are told for adults and children alike, as elements in solemn ceremonies and as spontaneous creations. Rather than being self-contained units, they are often incomplete episodes in a progression that goes back deep into a tribe's traditions. Long ago, Hubert Howe Bancroft wrote, "Language is thought incarnate, mythology soul incarnate. The one is the instrument of thought, the other the essence of thought. In mythology, language assumes personality and independence. Often the significance of the words becomes the essential idea. Thus the word for sun becomes the name of the sun god, the word for moon, the name of the moon goddess. The words themselves take on potency, as the Sioux medicine man Leonard Crow Dog explains. Our modern Sioux language has been white manized. There's no power in it. I get my knowledge of the old tales of my people out of a drum, or the sound of a flute, out of my visions and out of our sacred herb, Behuta, but above all, out of the ancient words from way back, the words of the grandfathers, the language that was there at the beginning of time, the language given to Weotahuichasha, blood clot boy. If that language, these words should ever die, then our legends will die too. In this volume we offer titles and categories for different tales, but these are, in the end, arbitrary appendages for a reader's convenience. No child will ask her grandfather to tell the story of the first arrival of winter, but will clamor instead, "Tell me again about Iktome getting caught when he steals food," or tell us about when the girl saved her brother. The tales can be divided in infinite ways, and we hope the chapters we have selected show both the common elements that run through stories told at opposite ends of the continent and the rich diversity of detail. Legends, of course, vary according to a people's way of life, the geography and the climate in which they live, the food that they eat, the way they obtain it. The nomadic buffalo hunters of the plains tell stories very different from those of eastern forest dwellers. To the southwestern planters and harvesters, the coming of corn and the changing of seasons are of primal concern, while people of the northwest, who take their living from the sea, fill their tales with ocean monsters, swift harpooners, and powerful boat builders. All tribes have spun narratives as well for the features of their landscape. How this river came to be, when these mountains were formed, how our coastline was carved. Legends as well as cultures overlap and influence each other, not only when people of different tribes live in adjacent territory, but when they encounter each other through migration or travel over long distances. Excavations of a pre-Columbian Hohokam site in Arizona uncovered a Mayan-style ball court, a hard rubber ball, copper bells, and exotic parrot feathers, all of which had to have come from central Mexico, more than 1,000 miles away. An Aztec-like image of the male face of the sun, surrounded by rays, is found painted and chipped into rock walls of the southwestern United States, as well as in contemporary Pueblo art. Now Tziti, the lost white sister, and Bahana, the white brother of Hopi prophecy, may embody memories of the Mayan Kukulkan or the Aztec Quetzalcoatl, the white plumed serpent god who comes from the east across the great water. Images and tokens were carried to faraway peoples, along with trade goods. White seashells and abalone shells are mentioned several times in ancient myths as ritual objects in areas 500 to 1,000 miles from the Pacific coast. Yet with all their regional images and variations, a common theme binds these tales together, a universal concern with fundamental issues about the world in which humans live. We encounter again and again, in a fantastic spectrum of forms, north and south, east and west, the story of the children of the sun, of the twin brothers who bring culture, of the sacred four directions, of worlds piled on top of each other, of primordial waters, of perpetual destruction and recreation, of powerful heroes and tricksters, Fiho, Rabbit, Coyote, and Spider-Man. History enters the mythic world obliquely, but leaves its definite mark in characters and incidents. Many tales and cycles embody the collective experience of a particular tribe, perhaps compacting into a single dramatic myth migrations, natural disasters, and other major events that occurred over generations and centuries, with mythically transformed references to historical episodes. The creation and fall from power of the Iroquois League, first sightings and later encounters with Europeans and other whites, beginning with missionaries and traders, later with armed soldiers, the suppression of religion by the Spanish and the Pueblo uprisings of 1680, the arrival in and displacement from traditional homelands, and the accompanying deaths or devastations, the dramatic watershed encounters at Fort Stanwix, at Rosebud, Little Bighorn, and Wounded Knee. By moving often cataclysmic events into the realm of myth or folklore, the storyteller can at once celebrate, mourn, and honor the past, and look ahead to a time when the great heroes may return to their people, bearing powerful medicine to restore former glory. But these legends do not merely confront cosmic questions about the world as a whole. They are also magic lenses through which we can glimpse social orders and daily life, how families were organized, how political structures operated, how men caught fish, how religious ceremonies felt to the people who took part, how power was divided between men and women, how food was prepared, how honor in war was celebrated. The images that transmit certain timeless concerns are resonant. In one account of the conflict between the sexes, men and women decide to live in separate camps, divided not only by anger and a brooding sense of injustice, but by a mighty river as well. Anthropological accounts seem pale in comparison. In the end, however, these legends are not told merely for enjoyment, or for education, or for amusement. They are believed. They are emblems of a living religion, giving concrete form to a set of beliefs and traditions that link people living today to ancestors from centuries and millennia past. As Bronislaw Malinowski said, myth in its living primitive form is not merely a story told, but a reality lived. A note on how these stories were selected. Many of these stories were collected by the authors themselves over a period of 25 years. Some of these have never appeared in print before. Others, which have been circulating for years, appear here in a new form as narrated by today's storytellers, freshly translated into English where necessary. Some of the Plains Indian tales were jotted down at powwows, around campfires, even inside a moving car. Most of them were taped, and a few have been edited so that they are understandable in this form. The second group of tales are classic accounts, which appear here in their original form. A third group come from 19th century sources, which, while containing the nuggets of the original tales, were also embellished in the somewhat artificial style typical of the period. The authors have retold these tales to restore them to a more authentic and less stilted form. So, this is part 1. Rabbit Boy kicked that blood clot around. Tales of human creation. So, I'll probably start reading this in another video. Or actually, it's just 2 pages. I'll read this introduction part. Creation myths deal with both how the physical world as we know it came to be and how many features of specific cultures originated, while the tales in parts 2 and 3 will deal with the first theme. The stories here grapple with those permanently vexing questions about the human condition. How and when did gods and humans become separated? Where did Indians get certain important elements in their daily life? Foodstuffs like salt or corn, animals like the buffalo or horse, religious artifacts and ceremonies. Why are men and women different? And when did the separation take place? Where did the different races come from? How did evil enter the world? What is death and how does it move in and out of life? These legends of human creation and the bringing of culture reflect in myriad ways a common belief that people are living part of a natural world brother and sister to the grain and the trees, the buffalo and the bear. Some Great Lakes tribes recount how they were originally made by the Great Sun, or, with the Ojibwe, Great Mystery. According to numerous others, the first woman was impregnated by, in the southwest, a sunbeam, in the northwest, a salmon, or as the Iroquois say, by the west wind, giving birth to twin heroes who perform famous deeds. The creation myth of the Great Lakes, Algonquians, focuses on the wanderings of the god Gluska, who tames the winds, obtains food and water for the people, and fashions various features of the landscape. He eventually goes off to the west to live in another world, where he makes arrows in preparation for the battle of the last day. The first human child is often endowed with supernatural powers. It outshines and outwits adults, grows up overnight, or performs great magic like a full-fledged medicine man. His mischief does good, too. Disregarding his parents, he wanders away from the camp, perhaps meets and slays a monster or two, receives a token of magic or power, and often encounters an old woman, perhaps his nurse, who puts an ogre in his path to rid herself of his powerful presence. The results of these adventures are significant watermarks to in the creation of a culture. Before Stone Boy was born, Sioux had no sacred ceremonies or prayers to guide them. Their spiritual development began when a pile of rocks instructed Stone Boy to build a sweat lodge for purification, for life, for which was sunny, health. On the other hand, the Brule Sioux say it was an old woman who was chosen to show her people the way to grandfather Peyote, the sacred medicine that bestows health and power. Another heroine, White Buffalo Woman, was a spirit who took the form of a beautiful maiden in shining white buckskin. She gave the tribes great herds of buffalo and taught them how to worship, how to marry, and how to cook. Her task completed, she walked away, stopped and rolled over and turned into a black buffalo, a brown one, a red one, and finally into the sacred white buffalo calf. Other culture heroines include Changing Woman of the Navajo, Turquoise Woman, White Shell Woman, and the Cheyenne's little sister, who calls the buffalo and feeds the people. The attributes of these heroines are often associated with fertility, conception, pregnancy, and birth. Corn maidens bring the all-nourishing maize and the knowledge of planting. They also invent pottery and basketry, as their association with seeds and grains is also with containers and storage. Women are often in charge of the flint, which sparks the first cooking fire. The origins of the Grand Medicine Lodge is a prominent part of the creation myth of the Great Lakes region, which features, like many others, a central set of twins, children of the west wind. When Wolf Brother is drowned by evil Manitus, he crosses an icy lake. He is brought back to life by the lamentations of Manabosho, White Rabbit, which become the foundation of the lodge. This particular myth has an important characteristic in common with creation stories from further west. The culture hero, or heroes, is at the same time a trickster and a fool. He may breathe life into humans and be responsible for giving them important features of their daily life, but he may also have the lustful or thieving urges that give him his life. All living things, one Sioux elder says, are tied together with a common navel cord. The tall mountains and streams, the corn and the grazing buffalo, the bravest hero and the deceitful coyote. So that's the introduction of this book. And next time I read it, I'll start with the story here. So, yeah, hope you liked that. Hope it helped you sleep a little bit. Thank you for watching my videos.